Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the program. It is the Thursday edition of the show, and we got some stuff lined up for you today. Now, first things first, unfortunately, Mike Shower is under the weather, and he's lost his voice. Texted me late last night and said that they tried to wait to see if he could speak clearly, and the answer to that is no. He can't. He's lost his voice, and so he is under the weather and resting. So no Mike Shower today, although we expected him an hour or two today. But that's okay. We got a lot of headlines and stories to cover and things to talk about on this beautiful rainy D-Day celebration. D-Day celebration. I mean, it is it's amazing. You think about when you think about the effort that it took to combat the Axis powers, and I have some thoughts on this that have been stirred recently by some reading I've been doing and some other things. So we'll talk a little bit about that in hour two this morning, but we won't have Mike Shower in hour two. Coming up here in hour one, we're going to be talking with Representative Ron Gilham, former rep, who's again running for election in a seat that he held formerly. We're going to talk to him in about 1 minute here. So let me just do a little housekeeping before we get squared away and start talking to Ron here this morning. He's going to come in and talk with us about his run, why he decided to file again, and what he thinks needs to be done in the legislature. We're gonna have that chat here in just a moment. A quick reminder that tomorrow is going to be the final day for AlaskaRadioAuction.com. That's where you'll find thousands of dollars worth of certificates for restaurants, and there's tools, there's some not fishing charters, there's some cruises, there's some zip line tours, all kinds of stuff left over there for things to do this summer, and do it for half price. And now you can save even more, because in these final days, they have an additional coupon, and that coupon is Save 20. That's all you got to type it into the little coupon box. So not only will you get the stuff for basically half of the regular price, you could save an additional 20% off your entire purchase by typing Save 20 in the coupon box and making it happen. And I think there's a couple big ticket items still left. Like, I know there's some garage flooring for anybody who lives in the Anchorage or the Wasilla area. If you're looking to get some epoxy garage flooring on which makes it, man, it turns your garage into a man cave. I think there's one more left, and I know that the price on that is super low. Like, it's normally a $4,000 value, and now you can get 500 square feet of epoxy flooring for like $1,000 or $1,100. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, go over to AlaskaRadioAuction.com and check it out, because they're shutting it down tomorrow at 5 p.m. It's cool. It's cool. You need to go check it out. But tomorrow's the last day, and it'll be shut down and gone until the holidays, when they do it for the holiday one. So if you want to do some cool stuff this summer, go to AlaskaRadioAuction.com and check it out. All right. Well, let's move over here to Our first guest of the day, Ron Gilham, is joining us discussing his candidacy and his run for State House, why he decided to jump back in the race, what he's seen over the last year or so, 2 years, the session, how he feels like it's gone. Let's get into it, shall we? And jump in right now with Ron Gilham. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad. We're getting things ready this morning, and we're ready to dive into this. So again, Ron, I mean, I feel like I should quote The Godfather, for a minute, where it says, we thought we were out, and then they pulled you back in. You have decided to get back into this race after escaping relatively unscathed, I guess, when it's all said and done. So, what made you do it, Ron? What made you decide to jump back into this race and make this decision?
Well, in all honesty, I kept hoping that somebody would put their name in, and I waited as long as I could, and I wasn't going to let him go back without some kind of an opponent. So, we see too many people that just go back to Juneau with nobody standing up against them, and I wasn't going to let that happen. So I wasn't happy with the way he was supposedly representing us, and he's more representing himself than the people of Alaska. So, like I said, I just kept hoping that somebody had put their name out there, and they never did. So that was so I wanted to put my name back in.
That is one of my pet peeves, to see candidates go back into office unopposed, even candidates that I love and I support. I always like to see, that second candidate in there, whether it's from their own party or from somebody else's, because it keeps the candidate sharp and on their toes and makes them, remember why they got put back in, or why they got put in office in the first place, right?
Yep. Competition makes you better.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Or it should anyway.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I agree with that concept. In all things, competition does make it better. Ron, let's talk a little bit about the track record of your opponent, and what did you find so offensive? I mean, let's talk about some of the things that as you sat from the sidelines here and watched. Of course, you're a victim of the ranked choice voting thing, but in this go around, because there's only two of you, your primary is basically going to be a poll for the general, because you two are going right on to the general. There's not enough people to sort it out. So what is your take on, what he has done over the last sessions here, and what really sticks out at you as things that you would not have done?
Well, for one thing, is I was looking over the bills that he proposed, and just about every one of them had something to do with pharmacies. Whether it helped him, it wasn't about Alaska. It was about helping him personally. And when I was there, I had bills that would help get rid of the pink slips that the teachers get afraid of every year. I had a bill that would get rid of that. I had a bill that would help the elderly with their property taxes, which, of course, being in a minority, none of those got heard. And then, but his bills were all about pharmacists. And, of course, him being a pharmacist and being backed by Big Pharma and NEA, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. But that's not a representative of Alaska. That's a representative of yourself. So I just couldn't go with that.
What would you say to the devil's advocacy position of people saying, well, he's putting those bills in because he understands it. It's his subject matter, so to speak. He's an expert on the subject matter. What would you say to people who say something like that? Like, he knows it. That's why he's putting those bills in and using his expertise in that way.
Well, that might be the case, but there's a lot of stuff I know too. But I was down there as a representative of the people of Alaska, not myself.
Okay.
So, that's the main difference. Like I said, you are a state representative. You're not a personal representative.
Right. Ron, in the past, I know that you've run, on the platform of the full PFD, on coming together with some kind of, budget plan and long-term fiscal plan. Has your position evolved? What are your thoughts on the budget as it sits now, on the permanent fund, on the way we're spending money? Give us your overall thoughts on that as well.
Well, I still believe that we should follow the law. The law says that we should get a percentage of the money, and it should be paid out first. It's not an afterthought. As far as the budget, I understand that we can't cut our way into a fiscal budget, but there's a lot of places that can be cut. In my opinion, now this is just my opinion, I think there's some places that can go away. Some, as an example, APOC. I really don't understand what APOC does except causes issues for people. But when I first got to Juneau, I asked people down there, what does APOC do? And they said they cause good people to not run. And so if you take APOC out of the way, then you're going to cut over $1 million right there. And there's just, I'm not for taxes. I will not introduce a tax unless I'm told to by the constituents of my district. And it would be a small tax, but I think taxes are theft. I pay myself about $10,000 to $12,000 a year in property taxes. And, you never own your property. You rent it from the government, which I think is wrong. But, until every, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Until every area that has money being spent that shouldn't is taken care of. You've got to look at that. And, we have how many thousands of positions that are funded, but there's nobody in. Well, get rid of those. You take that money, put it back into the budget, and use it where you need it.
Oh, but wait, Ron, we were told that really wasn't a real thing. We were told one that it wasn't a real thing, and then we were told by another legislator that those people spend money on good things, and so they should be allowed to keep that money to spend it on good things. What does that say to you about the appropriation process?
That tells me they got a slush fund someplace, and the good things are for themselves. I mean, look at the three in the minority in the Senate. They got no money from the budget. Which is everybody should get some kind of funding or something. But when I was there, I think we got $600,000 maybe. Well, everybody else is getting millions of dollars. We get $300,000. You can't do anything with that. But these good things, what is it? What are they talking about? Maybe it's something that's worthwhile. Maybe it's not. But when you're Bert Stedman, it's $30 million for a road to nowhere. I mean, that's money that was basically a waste. So you take that and you put it someplace where where it is something that's good. Now we got harbors that need work. Put that money towards the harbor.
Right.
So, there's.
Isn't that what the state's really responsible for? Shouldn't the state be the primary driver of infrastructure? I mean, I'm not a big fan of government spend on certain things, but there are a few things that the government should be responsible for, and infrastructure should be at the top of the list, right?
Exactly. Our roads. I mean, go down our roads. They are they're in dire need of work. Of course, the main roads they do. The road down to Homer. I haven't been to Fairbanks in a long time, but when you start getting onto the side roads, which more people are on them than they are the main roads, then you need to take care of those too. You can't just pick and choose. So I understand that you can't do all of them at the same time because the workforce is not going to let you do that. But one thing that I do advocate for is private sector. Get government out of the way. And I think if you get rid of a lot of the regulations, that your private sector will grow. But people are just, they get tired of the of the regulations, the red tape.
Right.
They don't want to
Right.
deal with it, so they just say, no, forget it. I'll step aside. I'm
Yeah.
not going to do it.
I'm not going to talk about that job. I'm not going to work for that because of the regulatory process, and the problem and the potential, again, for open litigation and those kind of things is pretty high. Ron Gilham is our
Exactly.
guest, candidate for State House in District 7, running for his seat that he lost last year to Justin Ruffridge, and he's attempting to take that back in this summer cycle. We're going to continue here in just a moment. We're up against the commercial break, and we'll return right after this. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more and Ron Gilham right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
All right, Ron Gilham is our guest here. We're in the commercial break. Jason just wins the internet today for his comment. Europe drives on the left side of the road. Alaskans drive on what's left of the road. That's he's
never been to South Africa.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. There's some tough roads out there for sure in what is supposedly a developed country. But it is good. It's people in the chat room were also a little shocked, Ron, when you say you pay $10,000 to $12,000 a year in property taxes.
Yes, I do.
Oof, man.
And they're going up.
And they're going up. That's a significant. I mean, when you're paying $1,000 a month in taxes to the government for the privilege of living on your property, that's oof, man, that's a ouch right there. That is definitely and that's something that's something that sticks in my craw, that I think property taxes are probably some of the evilest things that we've ever had in our lives.
Yeah.
Because you can never own anything at that point.
Exactly. I figured a person 65 years old has paid, on average, 40 years worth of taxes. Give them a break. No more property taxes. Let them retire.
Yeah.
But nope, they just keep jacking the rates up. They don't raise your taxes. They raise the value of your property. My property value has been raised by the assessor over 200. Actually, I've got two pieces of property, and each one of them has gone up over $150,000 in the last 4 years. So I'm paying taxes on $300,000 that I did not spend.
Right.
And
just
that, to me, is wrong. That's theft.
Yeah. Well, and that's, we talked with Chris Story about this because he's been advocating for a California style, a moratorium on a tax increase like that, like they did in California, because it was pricing, folks who bought a place for $150,000 and the market value is, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. And they were like, we only paid $100,000. How can we afford to live in the house that we lived in? And it was driving people out. And I think that's what it will do. In a lot of these areas as well. I mean, I think that property tax moratorium it's locked in at what you paid for it, plus or minus inflation, essentially. I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, the governments would hate it because it would cut into their making money.
Yeah. Well, the government's not supposed to make money. They're supposed to work for us.
Yeah. It's
but you know how that works.
Yeah, no, it's we work for you. In fact, we're going to get into that in the next segment. We're going to talk a little bit about that public-private disconnect and that kind of stuff. And you hit on a sore spot here. A couple people have commented about the regulations. There is an overarching this overarching framework of regulations, and it's not just the state, unfortunately. It's the federal government. Then there's a net of state regulations, and in some cases a net of borough regulations on top of that, where it's just this cascade effect of knock on costs and training and compliance, and everybody's terrified of making a mistake in that, because Uncle Sugar will come down and ruin your day on that.
Exactly. Well, I'll give you an example. My home, I bought a piece of property that has a house on the Kenai River. The house it's basically a 2x4 frame cabin, and it was built in the early 70s, and the riverbank has just been washing away. But because of regulations, I'm going to have to tear that house down. I can't fix the riverbank because the way it has to be fixed is with the gabion boxes. And they say, nope, that's not our preferred way to do it. You can put in root wads, which I would have to dig 10 feet underneath the foundation, which you'll never compact that back in. But they won't let me put the gabion boxes in. So because of regulations, I have to tear my house down that's been there since early 70s and build a new one. So besides the $10,000 a year in taxes, I got to build a new house. So,
Wow.
regulations are, they need to be looked at real hard and get rid of a lot of them we don't need.
I agree with that. All right, Ron, we'll hold the line. We're going to jump into this here and continue. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Ron Gilham's our guest. Let's continue on with it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing now. Ron Gilham is our guest, former representative of and now a candidate for House District 7. We were just talking about some of the regulations and some of the regulatory overreach. We were talking about property taxes. Interesting discussion during the commercial break on what's going on. $10,000 to $12,000 a year in property taxes. There's a whole nother discussion there, Ron, about whether or not we should have a statewide proposition like Prop 13 in California, where it locked in people's assessed values at the purchase price. Instead of allowing it to be jacked up again and driving people essentially out of their homes. Is that something you'd look at as a piece of, and I don't even know if the state could do it, but is that something you'd look at as a piece of legislation if you were elected?
I've been thinking about it. When I was down there before, I had a bill that would just, if you're over 65 or a widow of a, the husband or wife, whatever, whichever one passed away, then you would keep that exemption. But I've also was thinking about, well, as you pay your house down, your taxes go down. And once your house is paid off, you pay no more property taxes. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. But I mean, why do you have to keep paying money or taxes on money that you're not spending? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, because government has to eat, right? I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point of property taxes is the funding of government, regardless of how immoral it is, regardless of whether or not somebody actually ever owns their property or not. I mean, that's the immorality of it, is that it's there to feed government. And if you start cutting off the flow to the pig trough, the pigs get a little upset, Ron.
Yep, they do. You know what? 2 years ago, when the COVID thing hit, I was working on the slope. I lost my job. Nobody worried about my job. And the thing is, the people working in government are smart people. They are good at what they do. If they would go into the private sector, then they would help out. They would be more of an asset. And there's a lot of jobs there that they could fill in. So, they're not going to lose their job. They're just going to take and go to work at a different location. I don't want anybody to lose their job. I've been there. It's hard, but I've had to go to different places. So you take some of the people that are in government and you move them over into the private sector, and that would help. It would help the government. It would help them. It would help the private sector. I'm all about the private sector doing, more of the work than any government. You go down the road and you see road work, state of Alaska. No, get them out of there. Put private sector in there. Let them make the money. Government doesn't make money. Government spends money.
Right. No, exactly. It's never been a net producer. It's always a net consumer. That's the problem with government overall. And this actually leads to my next question, Ron. I don't know if you've been following our discussions that we've had at length with Senator Rob Meyer, but he's made a very interesting point that because we're a petro state, much like Venezuela or someplace else where the government basically controls the means of not the means of production, but the source of production, the oil itself and the resources, we've become a state, in fact, the only state in the union where the public and the private economies are disconnected. They're not connected at the hip. It doesn't matter what happens in the private economy. The government really doesn't care overall. The politicians really don't care. I mean, maybe there's individual ones, but overall, because that's not where the funding source for government comes from. The funding source for government comes from oil and the permanent fund. And so there's this disjointed kind of look at things. There's this disconnection between what goes on in a private economy and the public. And in fact, some legislators have said to other legislators, we've got the anecdotal things where they've said, I've had legislators come up to me and say, well, the public economy, the government spend is the economy. And it doesn't matter what else goes on. And that is, to me, kind of a frightening standpoint, because that means everything goes to the behest of the government. It doesn't matter what happens to the rest of the world, so to speak.
Pretty much. Where does government get their money? They get their funding from the private sector. They don't make money, so they get the money from the taxes from the private sector. If you take and cut that private sector off, where are they going to get their money from? I mean, I don't know where their disconnect is. But, the Pica project here on the slope, and that's where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm sitting on the side of the road in a loader. But the Pica project, the main reason it didn't shut down is it's on state land. The feds can shut down, whatever's on federal land, but they cannot shut down what's on state land. So if they're going to shut down the federal stuff, open up the state land. A gas line, the stands that hold up the oil line to Valdez was made for a gas line. There is room. So basically, except for the piping, the infrastructure is there.
Right.
Put the gas line in.
Yeah, that's what most people don't understand is when they build the Trans-Alaska Pipeline back in the 70s, the carriers and the stands and everything, the right-of-ways, everything was laid out to have a secondary line laid next to the line, and that secondary line was supposed to be for gas. They don't understand that. But again, the whole point here is that because Alaskans are not taxed, because that money it bypasses the people completely as the owners. The people are the owners. I've often advocated that what should happen is the state should pay all those royalties directly to the people and then tax it back if that's what they really want to do. Because I mean, you'd get a check for a family of four, you'd get a check for, or for each person would get a check for $20,000, and everybody'd be like, woo, woo, party. And then the next week, the state would issue the tax bill, and it would be $19,000 per person to have to pay taxes. There would be an abrupt halt in this state on the growth of state spending. I mean, it would come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, you want to hear some screaming, do that. But the problem with that is they're not responsible. They're like government. They would run down there, buy a new car, buy a new truck, whatever. And then the bill comes in and go, uh-oh, we don't have the money to do this. And then what? That's the issue with that. But I do agree. I mean,
well, that would only,
oh, by the way, you owe us $19,800.
But Ron, that would only happen once. Okay. Right. I mean, that would only happen once, where everybody would get $20,000 per person for the royalty. And this is all pie in the sky, folks. This would never happen. Government would never allow this. But if you wanted to be fair and equitable, you would pay each Alaskan their share of all the royalties that came out, and the PFD, you would pay it all to them. And then you would issue each Alaskan a tax bill. And if they got a check for $20,000 and the cost of government right now is about, $18,000 per person, all of a sudden people would get involved. Oh, I got 20,000. No, yep. I've only got 2,000. I just had to write a check on that 18,000. The spending in this state would come to a screeching halt.
Exactly. So you said something there that makes a lot of sense. People would get involved. Right now, people are not involved. That is the problem. And if they don't get involved, government's just going to keep taking and taking and taking and taking. And it's going to be too late by the time they say, oh, let's get involved. Let's do something. And you go, what? It's too late.
Yeah.
So people have to get involved. And I cannot state that enough, is you have to get involved. Whether you are donating to a candidate, whether you are going out and polling for people, getting signatures, whatever, we have to get involved. And that is just bottom line, because otherwise they're going to take everything.
Ron, one of the things that the state has suffered from is a lack of a fiscal plan. Now, I know the Fiscal Policy Working Group was instituted while you were in the legislature. You saw a lot of the discussions. I'm sure there was a lot of talking in the halls about what was going on. That's one plan that's been put forward, but we've been trying to implement it for 3 years, even a part of it. And nothing has come of it. The Senate said they have their fiscal plan. Their fiscal plan is the 2575. That is their fiscal plan. But even with those numbers, according to the governor's 10-year projections, even that will be consumed sometime in the future. What fiscal plan do you support? If you go down to Juneau, what will be the fiscal plan that you will be supporting with your vote and with your, for your constituents?
What Ben proposed during that time was excellent, but I'm not going to admit to being, a financial genius. I'm not Brad Keithley, but I will talk to Brad. I will talk to whoever I can to help me understand more of what needs to be done. But, I cannot say for sure exactly what I would do, because I really don't know. First of all, you got to get, 21 on 11, and that is very hard to do.
Sure.
But
do you support
like I said, what Ben had?
Yeah, do you support the concept of what Ben was trying to do at Ways and Means, and what that Ways and what the Fiscal Policy Working Group? Do you support the plan that they came out with?
I do.
Yeah. All right. We're coming up on the break here, Ron. Final thoughts on a fiscal plan. You obviously have said you support a full PFD. You support the Fiscal Policy Working Group's plan. But then again, we haven't seen any. You've got to be able to convince other people that that the plan is going to work. Would you support Ben as a senator or whoever fills his seat in the House and continue to push that plan forward?
I will. I do support Ben, and I do support John Hillier. So, I think both of them are good people. I think they are an asset to the state. And, John Hillier, to take Ben's seat, he is not a yes man. He is very conservative. And of course, Ben, we've seen him. He knows the financial situation the state's in, and he's doing everything he can to, get us out of that situation. But, he just needs help. So, hopefully we can replace enough people in the Senate. That's right now, that's kind of the stopgap. But, we need a couple more people in the House. And then we need, like what Mike Shower said, if you get this guy, maybe then this one here will come over. And then pretty soon you have your majority.
Right.
And that's what it's going to take. Until we have a majority in both, plus the governor, we're kind of dead in the water.
Ron Gilham is our guest. We got one final segment coming up. We're going to talk with him about his plans and his goals. If we wave the magic wand and he becomes the representative again, what is he going to tackle? And we're going to talk about that up next. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Ron Gilham is our guest. We're in the commercial break right now. I got to be honest. I'm kind of I'm kind of stuck on this Prop 13 thing, Ron, because I think that could do more for people in this state than almost anywhere else. I mean, again, you're not the only one down on the peninsula. I know the peninsula has had a huge problem with assessed values. I know they're doing the same thing in Anchorage. I know that there's been some talk in the Matsu that it's remained pretty stable, but that could change at any moment. There's been problems with the assessors in Fairbanks. I mean, the whole thing is, it's kind of a house of cards. But if we can get a hold of that, that could do more to help Alaskans than almost anything else.
I agree. And if I don't go back to Juneau, then I'm going to start putting a petition together to get signatures to get it on a ballot. And I've thought about doing that before, but I thought, well, if I get to Juneau, maybe I can do it through legislation. So, but like I said, that is something that is very important to me, not just personally, but everybody around me. The property rates just keep going up and up. And like you said, my next door neighbor paid $6,000 for an acre on the Kenai River. But right now, his property is assessed at over $200,000. And just the property, not the buildings on it, because there's only an old cabin. But he's paying tax. Well, his kids have it now, but they're paying taxes on $200,000 that they did not spend. So, that's wrong. Like I said, that to me is theft.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the problem is you cannot create generational wealth, right? I mean, that's part of the problem is that you can never create generational wealth in the long run, because all you're doing is, if you're leaving something to your children, you're burdening them. I've seen it happen with folks, up in the interior, where they get a piece of recreational property or something that's left to them, something that's been paid for 50 years, and all of a sudden they can't afford to keep it, because all of a sudden they're burdened with another, $8, $9, $10,000 a year in taxes for a piece of property that's owned free and clear, but they can't really enjoy it because they can't afford to keep paying the taxes on it. I mean, that's a real problem.
Yeah, I have 2 acres on the Kenai River that I spent a lot of money on when I was guiding, and it's mine. I cannot leave it to my kids, because they're going to inherit a 12 to 15 by the time I pass. They're going to inherit a $1,200 to $1,500 a month tax bill. And you think my kids want that? No way. They'll dump the property.
Yeah.
So that's wrong. Now, if I sell it, that's a whole different ballgame. But when government makes it to where you cannot leave your kids anything without having this huge tax bill, that's wrong. So, that the inheritance tax, or whatever, I can't leave my kids with that kind of a bill.
Right.
There's no way.
Yeah, no, it
forces me to sell it.
Yeah, exactly. And they may benefit from the money of the sale or anything, but they're deprived of the enjoyment of being able to, use an ancestral piece of property that they maybe grew up on or spent many good memories on or whatever, and now they can't do it. It's a frustrating thing for sure. I've seen it happen in my family. I've seen it happen to other people. And at some point you're just like, I mean, when does the bill stop? When does the money, outflow stop? And the answer is right now, it never does.
Never.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just never do them.
I mean, I have grandkids, and they're not going to be able to enjoy the property.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, again, I grew up and spent summers on recreational properties and things like that. My grandkids will never be able to enjoy the same thing, because I certainly couldn't afford to pay the taxes and the insurance on some of the properties that are out there, even though they're paid for. There's just no way I would ever be able to afford that. And that breaks my heart. That just breaks my heart that kind of stuff happens. But to me, this is an issue that we don't normally get into, but you really kind of spurred it on this morning, talking about your own property tax situation, that I think would benefit a tremendous amount of Alaskans if if we could get a handle on that. They would benefit more from that than almost anything else. I mean, think about if the average house is $200,000 in the state of Alaska, but most of them are 15 years. I don't know what the average mortgage sits at. Maybe they paid 10 or 15 years on a 20-year mortgage. If you could have locked it in at what they paid for it, how much more money would you have had if it was, $4,000 or $5,000 a year over the course of 15 or 20 years? How much more money could you have saved or put into the economy or invested? I mean, it's a big chunk of money.
Exactly. I have a friend that bought a house. It was for sale for $550,000 for 2 years and never sold. He offered them $350,000 and they took it. The borough comes in and says, nope, it's worth $550,000. And now they've got it up to $750,000.
Right.
So he's paying taxes on $400,000 he never spent.
Yeah.
And he couldn't sell it for $750,000. There's no way. He'd
Right.
be lucky to get $450,000 out of it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ron, hold the line. Let's get back into it. That's a pet peeve. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're continuing now. Ron Gilham is our guest, candidate for House District 7, former representative for that same House seat in the past. We're coming down to the last segment of the show here today, Ron, before we let you go. And so, let me wave my magic wand and basically say, okay, Ron, you're now the candidate. You're now the representative for House District 7. What is your first year back in the saddle going to look like? What are you focusing on? What are you going to be targeted in that first year, that first 2 years, the first session? What is going to be your main focus, and what are you going to try and accomplish and achieve in that time period?
Honestly, when I first went to Juneau, I was on the education committee, and that really was kind of a second thought. But since I wasn't there for the past 2 years, I've done a lot of research on education and where it's at. And nationwide, I know Alaska is 48th or 49th in the nation, but nationwide, our schooling system is in the toilet, to be honest. NEA, I have hammered on NEA, who is a 100% supporter of my opponent. And I'm not anti-union. Don't get me wrong. I am not anti-union. I am anti-NEA. NEA, their attorney said that their goal is to make America a socialist country, and they have 3 million people paying them to do it. So if I can get rid of NEA, that'd be great. But why doesn't Alaska take the lead, go back to teaching phonics instead of this whole word reading system? That will help and make our kids learn how to read. So education is a big issue to me. Everybody can be a teacher. I give you an example. I went to the dump the other day. I took my grandson. I pull up onto the scale. It says 78, 90, something like that. So I go up, I throw the garbage out, I come back, and I get on the other scale, and it's got 78, whatever. I says, how much difference? And I made him think, not write it out, not with a computer, not with a calculator. In his head, I made him come up with the answer of how much of the garbage we put out. And he did it. So we can all be teachers. They don't have to be in a schoolroom. So
Right.
To me, there's a difference between schooling and education. But I don't understand why Alaska, we have some great teachers. Teach the kids how to read. Teach the kids, go back to basics. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, and true American history. This stuff they're teaching them now is garbage. The inherently white racist stuff. That's not right. I am nowhere. I don't have a racist bone in my body. But why doesn't Alaska take the lead? This is what we can do. We don't want to follow along behind these people. This is what we can do. Help our kids. So the education to me is really, really important. I said that and the tax thing, that's kind of the two main issues. But, when you're down there, you have different things come up. But trade schools teach kids how to how to uh, how to work with their hands. Be a welder. We have an aging workforce on the slope. Be a welder. Be a crane operator. Be a truck driver. I mean, Rob Meyer's a truck driver. I run equipment. My son is an operator on a platform. So, you know, teach the kids how to make a living, not go to college and learn how to run a computer or get some kind of a basket weaving degree. Um, I don't know if you know, Columbia University, one of the top, supposedly one of the top colleges in the country. When a kid goes into Columbia University, spends 4 years, gets this great big bill. When he comes out, he doesn't know any more than when he started. And that statistically show that. So don't push kids towards college. Push them, because not every kid's going to have to go to college. An attorney, a doctor, nurse, maybe they have to go to college. But the majority of the kids coming out of high school are not going to go to college. So get into, start trade school early. I started working with my dad when I was 12.
Right.
And so to me, trade school is very, very important. But the education part of kids, of our young kids, is very important. And like I said, over the last 2 years, the research I have done, it's been appalling, to be honest.
Right. Well, that's part of the problem is that when we've got this, this kind of assembly line kind of mentality of, you got to go to kindergarten, you got to go through, 1 through 6, you got to go through, junior high, you got to go through high school, and then the next logical step is, of course, college. But when the results are that the college degrees do next to nothing for many people, not all people, but many people, like you said, doctors, engineers, lawyers, there's specific instances where college courses are very important. But they were sold this bill of goods that if you do this, you go to college, you get a good education, you'll get a job and you'll be successful. And it's not necessarily the truth. And again, the disdain that people have had for trade jobs over the last 35 or 40 years in this country has really been detrimental to the country. Because now we're missing a lot of these trade, but we have vacancies in a lot of these trade positions, and it's because they've treated the trades with disdain. They need to be on an equal footing with college at that point.
Exactly. I mean, on the slope here, there are a lot of open positions because they can't find anybody that wants to work. They come out of high school, they've been pushed towards college, and you're entitled to this. No, you come up here and you make a living. We have. Now I will say that the Native community coming out of the villages, there's a lot of natives here that they want to work. They're not interested in college. They come over here and they learn how to run equipment. They learn how to weld, and they'll start out as a laborer, just like I did. And so, there's a lot of open jobs on the slope and across the country. Truck drivers, especially truck drivers. We cannot find enough truck drivers to fill the positions that are open.
Right.
We have tried to hire equipment operators. There's none available.
Right.
So, if a guy wants a job that pays, $100,000 a year without having a $300,000 debt, learn how to drive a truck, learn how to drive equipment. And that was something that I tried to push when I was in Juneau, is trade schools. If the state is going to give money to go to college, give them $6,000 to go to learn a trade. They're going to pay that back with the taxes that they, when they make, when they're working.
Right.
So
right.
You get people say, we don't pay taxes. Well, I just told you, I pay 10 to 12,000 a year in just property taxes.
Yeah.
So I do pay taxes. I go to the store, I pay taxes. I buy gas, I pay taxes.
Right.
But, so we need to tell these kids in school, if you don't want to go to college, if you're not going to be a doctor, a lawyer, something, don't get into that big debt. Do this.
Right.
Well, I heard Gary Stevens come in the education committee and this came out of his mouth, and I was floored. He said, "We have to get these kids out of school, into college, because right now they're coming out of high school and going right to work, and we have to get them back into college." And I thought, what? Really?
Yeah. Well, that's that's the problem, treating it with this inequity of the college is vastly superior to trades when the outcomes show that is absolutely not true. That there's a lot of people who are more predisposed to the trades, and if they had that opportunity and that option, and they were encouraged to do trade school rather than go to college, they wouldn't go into debt. There wouldn't be this massive student debt crisis, and they would be positions that are filled, and we would be making things go. It's an astonishing thing. All right, Ron, we're down to the last couple minutes here. I know that last time around, we didn't get a chance to, we were trying to put together a debate to talk about you and your opponent. Would you be interested in doing a debate this time around if we can get your opponent on together and you guys can talk out your differences?
At this time, no. So, for just personal reasons, but at this time, no. It may change later, but right now, I just am not.
Okay. You're willing to come on the program, though, if you are elected and give us updates and keep us in the loop, I assume.
Anytime.
Okay. All right, Ron, we're down to the last. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If somebody wants to talk to me, I'll give you my phone number, and they can call me. And if I don't answer, it's because I'm in the middle of doing something. Like I said, I'm working on a slope, and I'm running equipment, and so. But somebody calls and leaves a message, I'll call them back.
Right. So if folks want to find you, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do it? And your final elevator pitch here. We got about 90 seconds, Ron, before we got to go to break. So how do they get a hold of you? Where do they find out more information? And your final elevator pitch?
Okay. You can call me on my phone. It's area code 907-953-6525, or send me an email at Gilham4House. That's Gilham FOR House at yahoo.com. And if you want somebody that's going to represent the people of Alaska and represent you, then I would suggest voting for me. If you want somebody who is going to represent NEA or Big Pharma, then send my opponent back, because that's who is supporting him. And I don't lie to you. I will not lie to you. You may not like what I say, but I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. So it's going to be. He's been there for 2 years. I was there for 2 years. Look at our records. Look at what we were stood for. He stood behind, supporting his NEA and pharma backers, and I stood behind the bills for the Alaskan people.
Yeah. No, it's a it's a good opportunity to do some comparisons. Like you said, since you both had 2 years in there you go. Ron Gilham, thanks so much. We're out of time. Back with more. All right, Ron, any final thoughts here before I let you go? We're up against the break. We're out of the break rather. There was a comment here that I wanted to read. Cindy says in the chat room, Ron, as you head down the campaign trail, please consider focusing on the specifics your opponent didn't do for his constituents, because facts will matter and should be shared. Good luck on your campaign. And I would agree. Specific things would be a good thing, and some of those specifics. And I know you said earlier that, you went down to Juneau kind of wide-eyed to begin with, and then you learned a lot of things. And since then, you've also continued to learn. You're going to come back with some specifics on what you would do differently than your opponent, and some of the things that your constituents want, I'm assuming here, as you focus ahead.
Yes. Yeah, this kind of came up kind of quick, so I haven't really gone into my campaign full force yet. But I want to have some meetings with some people, and I want to see what they want, what they need. Brad keeps coming up with taxes. I'm not going to introduce a tax unless my constituents say, okay, we will accept this. And that'll be the last ditch effort to do something. But like I said, I am not a tax person. I despise taxes. But I want to talk to people. I want their perspective of what needs to be done. I want to know what what they want me to do. It's difficult because of the 21 and 11, but if you have the right issues, you can get that. So it's just difficult. And but like I said, I will be a representative of the people of Alaska, and especially my district. There's another issue is the fish, and there is a bill to change from hatcheries to an enhancement, which will help both the commercial, the sport, everybody. But to get that across is going to be very difficult. But that's something that I want to try and do. So if we can kind of help this fish issue, maybe it'll stop the fighting amongst the locals in town. So,
Well, that would definitely.
That's a tough issue.
I mean, fingers crossed that if we could ever get that done for sure, because we would love to see that problem fixed. Unfortunately, There's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of contention amongst those things, and definitely makes it difficult for sure. All right. Exactly. Well, Ron, thank you so much for coming on board. I'll let you get back to work. Thanks for being part of the show today, and we look forward to look forward to seeing how you're able to do here in this election cycle. Thank you, Ron Gilham, for coming on board.
All right, Michael. Thanks for having me.
All right.
We'll talk to you later.
All right. Appreciate it. Ron Gilham, our guest here on the program for today, as we continue on this beautiful D-Day, 80 years of D-Day. We're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. We'll be getting on with that and seeing what comes. Seeing what comes out of that. I don't know. I mean, I would love to see Ron. I would love to see Ron and Ruffridge have a debate. I think that would be good. Ron is not always the most eloquent of speakers, but I think he has this heart in the right place, and I think he does believe that, his fight for the constituency is the most important thing. And I think he's a damn good candidate. So we'll see what happens as we go further along in the race here, to see if we can get some kind of debate or tete-a-tete go on between the two of them. The Ron Gilham response to a constituent asking for taxes: "I'm begging you with tears in my eyes not to ask for taxes." Yeah. Oh man. All right. Let's see. Melody says, "My husband is an equipment operator, self-taught. My granddaughter, who graduated in 2021, tried college. It didn't work for her. She got a good paying job at Head Start working with kids, which is what she was going to college for, teaching." Yeah, no, let me look. College. There's a good place for college. There's a thing for college. There's a place for college in all these plans, but it's not the end all be all that we've continued to be so. I mean, since I left high school myself, almost 40 years ago, I left high school, and I remember then there was this huge push. Well, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. And people never ask why. It's just the thing to do, right? There's no discussion on, trade schools or, any kind of on-the-job training or alternative or entrepreneurship. That's the other thing. It's that's the thing. Amy asks, "What does the D in D-Day stand for?" That, I think it's deployment, isn't it? Meaning the term for D-Day is used by the armed forces to refer to the beginning of the operation. The D stands for day, meaning it's actually short for day. It's the day, essentially. And so D-Day is, some have said it's departure decision, but most people say that it's the day It stands simply for day. So D-Day is the day that it happened. All right. Melody said, I also went to a trade school for dental assisting, and I've supported my family for 43 years with that career. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I imagine, I would venture to guess that your schooling, your dental assistant school, was not nearly as expensive or as extensive in some wide variety of learning as a regular college course, I would assume. I mean, that's the whole point behind what they were calling, I don't know what they call them today, but 10 years ago, they were calling them rocket courses, where you'd spend a few thousand, you'd pay a few $1,000s, $8,000 to $15,000, and you'd go through a course that lasted, 3 months, 4 months, and you'd come out on the other side with some very specialized training in the area of expertise that you were looking for. I mean, I'm reminded about this.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yeah, it's live around the world on the internet, as you could tell, on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Dukes Show. Hello. Good morning. Welcome to it. Welcome to the 80th anniversary of D-Day. The Day. That's what somebody asked in the chat room. What does the D in D-Day stand for? It's the D is the code for day. It's the day. It's the beginning of an operation. So D-Day is the beginning, the day that an operation starts. And that was, of course, D-Day for the storming of Normandy and the beaches of Omaha. And, it's, man, what an amazing generation of folks to go out there and try and fight for freedom. I got some thoughts on this that I think we're going to get to a little bit later on in the program today. And we'll discuss it a little further. And I've got some other news. By the way, for those of you who are waiting for Mike Shower, he did reach out to me last night, and he is very sick. He's lost his voice. He can't talk. And so he asked to beg off, and we'll have him back on next week to talk about all the stuff that's going on in the legislature and kind of whatever else we want to talk about with him. But he is unable to join us today. So it's just you and me in hour 2 this morning. And so good morning to you. How are you this morning? You ready to go? Yes, I know I can't read a clock. It's how it is today. It's just, I get into a subject and I'm a little passionate about it. And that's kind of how we roll, so to speak. All right. Let's talk a little bit here about what we were talking about. Let's jump into this. I know I just said I ran past the clock. I just told you all the things that I was doing. So what we were talking about during the commercial break was this idea, and Ron he's touched on a couple things that are kind of pet peeves and lodestones of mine. One is this idea of property taxes, and we may get into that later on in the show this morning. But I have a hatred of property taxes. I mean, an absolute, so much so that usually I end up paying my taxes late because it just turns my stomach to part with the money and give it to government for the pleasure of owning a piece of land. I mean, I still own a piece of land in Fairbanks, and I own it free and clear. And yet every year I'm forced to pay my tribute to Rome, as it were, for a piece of land that's free and clear and has no value except for resale value, right? It's pretty much it at this point. And it just drives me crazy. I don't want to get into that. So right before the break, we were talking, right before we came back from break, late, right before we came back from break, we were talking about, the education, because Ron touched on the other thing that he touched on that was one of my kind of my pet peeves and one of my hot buttons is this idea that everybody needs to go to college. Everybody needs to go to college, from the littlest baby just going into kindergarten. The parents are already saving up for their college fund and everything else. And that if you don't go to college, that you're some kind of failure. And that's the implication. I know, because that was kind of the implication when I decided after a year of college in Fairbanks, right after high school. Who am I kidding? It wasn't even a full year. It was mostly just over a semester. And I was like, what am I doing? I have no interest in this at all. And I decided to go out and find my way in the world. And I did. And here we are today. Now, whether or not that's success or not, you'll have to be the judge of that. But I remember the disappointment in people's eyes when I decided not to continue with my college education. And I've seen others who have faced the same kind of thing. This whole feeling of, oh, he could have gone to college, but he's such a disappointment, that somehow because you got a college degree, it doesn't matter that if in the end you end up working at Starbucks or some retail establishment or something after you spent your 4 years and your $200,000 on your 4-year degree in whatever it is, business administration, underwater by gender studies, whatever it is, somehow you are, but as long as you got that pigskin on the wall, hey, or sheepskin. Pigskin is the football. Sheepskin is the diploma, right? As long as you got the diploma on the wall, well, he's a success then. Doesn't matter that he went $250,000 in debt. Doesn't matter that he's a success even if he's working at 7-Eleven. And of course, on top of that, it wouldn't have been that it wouldn't have been as bad if that was it in isolation. But on top of that, they then started treating the trades with utter disdain. Oh, you want to go to trade school? Oh, man, don't you know you should go to college? Colleges. You need to go to college. Why would you go to the thing? And it was the trades were looked down on. It was this kind of class warfare. And really the education industrial complex at work, says Jeffrey. And it's 100% right. That was exactly the marketing campaign that was put together, because then on top of it, we started getting government subsidies for colleges and we started getting government loans for colleges, which of course then started to drive the cost of college up because they knew everybody wanted it. And we know we're going to get government money for it. So let's just drive the cost of tuition up and everything else. And it's just madness, absolute madness that's where we're at. Meanwhile, the trades have we don't have an unemployment problem in the trades in this country. We have an employment problem. We are always looking for somebody to fill the trades, whether that's a welder, a mechanic, a truck driver, and you could look down on the trades all you want. If you've got some kind of college degree and you're feeling superior because your white collar job is so great, and everything else. But boy, I tell you, the minute that you need a plumber, you're thankful for that. You're thankful. Oh, things are ankle deep and smelly in here. I'm looking for a plumber. You're not looking down on the trades then, are you? But there's also been this shift, and we were just talking about it before we came back from break, about these specialty schools. Melody in the chat room said something about that she had gotten, she went to a trade school for dental assisting. It was a trade school for being a dentist assistant, and she'd supported her family for 43 years with that career. And I said, well, that probably wasn't the same cost as college, right? She said $3,500 in 1981. Okay, all right. So maybe in today's money, maybe that's $35,000, right? In the intervening 40 years, maybe it's $35,000, but still a fraction of what it would cost to go to. I mean, colleges, even the University of Alaska these days, what is it, $30,000 a year for just a basic BS and BS? I mean, it's still that one course, which she then used as a career for the next, 40 years, was a one-time fee. And that's why we're seeing things like 10 years ago, they were calling them rocket courses, where essentially it was a course that lasted 3, maybe 4 months, sometimes as few as 6 weeks, but usually, 3 to 4 months, where you'd go in there, you'd pay a fee. And the story that I'm remembering was about a young lady who got out of high school. She had an interest in computers and things like that. So she took this rocket course on computer programming. And I think it cost her $7,000 or $8,000. And it was a 13-week course. She went in. It was a high pressure, high immersion, 10 hours a day for 13 weeks. But when the thing was over, they had a job placement, and they placed her in a job that was making $75,000 a year to start. And within a year and a half, she was making $120,000 a year as a computer programmer. You don't hear about those kind of stories. I mean, I was shocked when I read this story, because I'm like, you don't normally hear about, you hear about how everybody has to go to college and everybody has to go to college. Is great for its specific need. It's not the one-size-fits-all tool that works for everything, just like there's no toolbox that only has one tool in it. If you want to be an engineer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you have something that requires that kind of specialized overall training of the full-rounded college, great. But quit sending every kid to college to say this is the panacea, this is the golden ticket for you to be successful, because we know that that's not necessarily the truth. Many of these kids would be better off finding something that they, A, have an interest in, and taking a specialty course, on-the-job training, union apprenticeship, rocket program, AvTech, or some kind of trade school or technical. They should all be treated equally. If you're getting money for a college education at some podunk university because it says university next to its name instead of trade school, you should damn well be able to get that same amount of money to go to some kind of trade school instead. I mean, it is an astonishing thing. And it's really frustrating that we see that again and again. It's getting better now, in my opinion. I mean, people like Mike Rowe and the Mike Rowe Works Foundation. I mean, he's really been highlighting how, those dirty jobs, those blue collar jobs, the ones that supposedly nobody wants, how these people love them, how they make a good living at it, how it's a respectable job. He's really brought some of that, I don't want to say prestige, but he's really brought some equity back to the playing field on that. And he's highlighted the problem in America where we've treated the trades with disdain for so long. It's finally good to see some of that needle moving back in the other direction. And I think finally people are starting to, and I think the pandemic, I think the pandemic really helped, because it taught people, especially people who were considering going to college, that they didn't need to. And now, of course, the cry and the hue and cry is, oh, college enrollment is still down from pandemic. Yes, and it should stay that way. People should be free to go out and take a look at other things and moving in a different direction rather than just a 4-year college education, if they want to. I'm not saying that college is bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to college if you don't need to for whatever your chosen field is, but you should be given all the options instead of just the one golden road. You've got to follow this road and this road only. And if you veer off, you're a failure, which is how many of us felt when we dropped out of college back in the day. I mean, and then we'll talk about things like, how many millionaires are college graduates versus how many self-made millionaires are only high school graduates and entrepreneurs. I mean, you start looking at those numbers and you realize, why aren't we glorifying the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the people who followed their dream rather than the people who knuckled down and did 4 years of college that they hated and went into $250,000 of debt for and now are miserable because they have to pay all that stuff back and they're not as successful as they told they would be. All right. I can read a clock now. I'm going to take a break. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Melissa Beth. She's got a... She says, a full-time homeschooling mom here, 4 degrees earned in less than 4 years. Early child education, development, art sciences, landscape garden center, business management. My mom told me I had to go to college, so I did. I tell my children to avoid college if they can and go to the trades. Get paid while you learn and have a marketable career. 4 in the trade so far, and they're financially secure with the retirement accounts at the ages of 25, 23, 21, and 19. My 17-year-old is headed to college for her vet. I'm assuming that's vet training or something, because that's what needed. When you're a veterinarian, you need to go to college for that. She's making my point for me. That's what you have there. Jeffrey says you can have all the design engineers in the world. You still need the trades to pour the concrete, pull the wires, install the HVAC, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. Again, you're always disdainful of the trades until your toilet backs up or until your lights short out. Or until you need an extension built onto your mansion, which you probably don't have because you went to college. Sorry, that was a little mean. Anyway, Greg says, I'm not blue collar, more like mud collar. Well, you know what I mean, Greg. Tawny says, I went to college for 2 reasons. 1, I wanted to, but more specifically 2, to check a box, because at that time you couldn't get a job without seeing on the requirements college degree required. And again, that was, the society falling into line with the educational industrial complex with this requirement that you had to do it. I didn't. I just refused. I just refused, Have you seen what a journeyman have you seen what a journeyman electrician makes? No, but I imagine that it's well into the 6 figures. Am I wrong, Brian? You tell me. My guess is $130,000 a year. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you say? You tell me, Brian, how much is it? I imagine it's well north of 6 figures, but that's just me. Renewal of the tax cap will start appearing in the NFSB right now, Barbara says. Good, Barbara. Thank you. We'll have you guys on the program once we get that going on. Brian told me, he said that $130,000 a year is pretty close. And Terry says, and then you add the Davis-Bacon if it's a government contract. Ooh, baby. Then you're in high cotton. At that point. Oh, I was complaining about when I pay my taxes that I'm always late to pay my taxes because it just burns me up and I don't want to give them the money, but I eventually do. And Fat Ray over on YouTube says the Gender Studies Department at the NFSB School Board thanks you for your contribution. Wow. You should see the exceptionally high level of respect Google has for D-Day with their doodle today. Okay, let me go over there and see what Google has on their doodle. Celebrating Jeannie Cordova. I have no idea who Jeannie Cordova is. Oh, it's a Pride Month thing. Of course it is. I mean, we got all month of Pride Month. D-Day only happens one day in June. But of course, we have to we'll celebrate the pioneering lesbian activist. I mean, okay, great. I mean, great. Just great. Fine. Just fine. Fat Ray's on a roll today. Yeah, absolutely. Willie says Bristol Bay Native Corp has a fantastic program to put shareholders through equipment courses, CDL classes, cooking and housing and cleaning courses. That helps them find jobs on the slope, the mines, etc., local jobs. Yeah, no, it's a good thing. All right, we're 30-second. Oh, my goodness, you should hear, Barbara tells me I should hear the closing comments of the FNSB school board meeting on Tuesday. If somebody can send me a link to that to my email, that would be great. That way I don't have to take the time to go try and hunt it down. Barbara, if you have a link to it, why don't you email me the link? Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay, welcome back to the show. I had all these things that I wanted to talk about, and sometimes you just kind of get into a groove and you're like, I just don't even know if I want to. I don't even know if I want to pursue these lines of, all these things to talk about. Let me say first and foremost, I've opened up the phone lines. And I guess what I will say to you, if you want to join me today on the phone at 319-527-3864, 319-527-3864. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to, and I guess my question today would be, what are you going to be asking potential candidates for office that are representing you? What are going to be the questions if you get a candidate that walks up to your door and knocks on your door to try to ask for your vote? What are the questions that you are going to ask that candidate? If you get him in a political forum and are handed a mic, what are you going to ask the candidate in that political town hall forum? And, what is going to be your line of questioning? What do you care about in those situations? So that's just a thought. And if you want to talk about this education thing of college versus trade schools, I'd love to talk about that. Or if you want to talk about property taxes and the evil that is, I'm just going to say it, it's evil. It is the way that government leeches the lifeblood out of Americans at every level. Well, but Mike, the government just couldn't function if you couldn't. We went without property taxes for decades in this country. I mean, it's a fairly new thing, as widespread as it is now. It was and in fact, the initial, oh God, I can just feel this rant coming on. The initial push for property taxes would be unrecognizable from what it is today, because original property taxes were taxed on places like farms, etc., where they were taxed on the gain. So if you had 10 acres of farmland and you grew wheat or apples or whatever the hell you grew on it, you would be taxed on the production of that land. If the land was fallow, you didn't use it, it was just farm, that was not, property taxes were on the profit of that land, which I still have a problem with. But if the land was unused other than just for living or whatever, it wasn't taxed. Taxes are an evil because it's not something you can avoid paying without the government sending in the jackbooted thugs with guns and flak jackets to take you off to the cage. Now you're like, oh, you're overstating it. Well, maybe, but let me just tell you this. What happens to you if you don't pay your property taxes for 3 years? And then the borough or the city or the state seizes your land for not paying the taxes. And then they send the state troopers or the local police to your place to arrest you for now trespassing on somebody else's land because it's been sold out from under. So am I really overstating it when I say the government comes in at the force of a gun and takes you away because you refused to pay homage to the king? I mean, that's what it's about. And what is that money used for? Supposedly to take care of government for everybody. I mean, there could be other ways. There could be use taxes. There could be sales tax. There could be many other taxes. Property taxes is the most insidious because everyone has to have a place to live and lay their head. And even you renters out there, you're paying property taxes. You're not paying them directly, but you're paying them nonetheless. It's all baked into the cost of your rent or your lease or whatever it is. So we're all paying them. It doesn't matter if you know, how long you've owned the property or not. You will pay them till the day you die. You will be paying tax. Inevitable as death and taxes. There's a reason that phrase is there. So if you want to talk about that, you can talk about that as well. I didn't mean to sidebar there. This is what I mean when I said I had these things I wanted to talk about and I never got to it. Today is the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And today there is a group of World War II veterans, the greatest generation, as they're called. Many of them going to France and the beaches of Normandy for what is probably the last time. The vast majority of the veterans who sat on the beaches of Normandy today will probably never return. Many of them are centenarians. I mean, they're over 100 years old. And we've all probably watched, my wife has never, I don't know if she's ever finished it or not. I remember we watched Saving Private Ryan in the theater. And if you've never watched Saving Private Ryan, and especially in a theater setting, the big screen ahead of you, the surround sound, the thing, I still remember looking around, understanding intellectually, because World War II was a favorite history point of mine. I mean, I love to read about history, and World War II was one of my favorite eras to look into and read about and discuss. So I was familiar. I thought I understood. I thought, intellectually you can understand the numbers and how many and how long they assaulted and the number of deaths and everything else. But I remember myself watching that scene in Saving Private Ryan, which is, 30 years ago now, 25 years ago? And being just shell-shocked just by the actual, and this is a movie, folks. This was not real life. But looking over at my wife, and my wife is just weeping. And looking around the room and seeing people just openly weeping at this. That, to me, that movie brought home more of the sacrifice and the strength and the courage of those men than anything I had ever read before, any speech I'd ever seen before, any history book or anything else. I looked around and I looked at the faces of the people around me in the movie theater, and all I saw was the utter devastation of what these people. I don't think my wife ever actually finished the movie. I think she left. If I remember correctly, she left. Maybe she came back, but I mean, it's a devastating. That was a devastating day in what was one of the first steps of the war into Europe, with thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed. The Battle of Normandy, there was over 73,000 Americans, 73,000 allies, because it was all allied forces. 73,000 allied forces were killed and 153,000 wounded. That was D-Day and then the Battle of Normandy as it progressed over the next few days. The initial landing, 4,400 Allied troops were killed on the day as they were trying to land on the beaches. And it is just an amazing testament to the fortitude, to the bravery, to the character of Americans and the Brits and the Scots and all of the Allied forces that day as they landed into what was literally hell's half acre. And I have so much respect for those fellas. So much respect. And it really made me think, and I was reading a book, I've been reading this book, and it has to do with the theory of alternative timelines and quantum theory and some other things, but there was a whole commentary section on World War II itself, because there were discussions about, what if this happened and what if that happened and what would the timeline look like if this took place and that took place and everything else. But what it really came down to was basically this discussion. This is a fictional book, but it has a lot of kind of hard science in it. And it talks about how in timelines where the war ends quickly or the Germans are held at bay after they've taken a bunch of territory and then the war stops, that they would eventually come back. And that basically what we needed to do was we needed, as a people, as a humanity, as a human race, we needed to face evil. We needed to face evil and not let it grow in our midst. That in every timeline where the Germans were either the war ended quickly or the Germans were stopped after their expansionism and then allowed to percolate, it was World War I all over again. Because then they just bided their time and then attacked another 20 or 30 years later. But that we as a people needed to look evil in the face, and that this was kind of our turning point. And the author had a very good point on that. This was the time when we faced evil. Whether it was the evil of the Nazi regime, the madness of Hitler, the Holocaust, the genocide that we saw there, whether it was the madness of the Japanese in the things like Operation Paperclip, their treatment of the Manchurians, the forced labor camps, the Bataan Death March, all these things where we were facing evil head on, truly, not just national sovereignty, we're protecting ourselves, but just pure evil for evil's sake. That's a turning point for a civilization, in my mind. And these boys on the beaches of Normandy were at the tip of the spear. They faced evil. Now, I'm not saying that the average soldier was necessarily that way, but the powers that be, the orchestration behind the scenes, it was, the genocide of 6 million Jews. This was evil. And all it takes for the forces of evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. These men did something. They stood up. These brave men, with the support of other brave men and women, but these men were the ones that stepped into that hellish landscape to get the job done. And they just have my ultimate respect. My ultimate respect. So if you or a family member is a member of that greatest generation, served in World War II, and again, we're 80 years out from D-Day today. So many of these people are, I guess the minimum you'd have to be is really like 95, right? Because there were 15-year-olds that snuck into the Army. You'd have to be at least 95 or 100. This is the greatest vanishing generation. If you're out there and if you know them, please give them my thanks. Give them my thanks. Give them my love. Give them my respect. Because we had to face evil. We had to, as a people, as a nation, as a group of allies, as the Western free world, we had to face evil. And they did it for us. And I'm so grateful for them. So grateful for them. All right. I feel a little less ranty now because I've been thinking about that for a couple days. And it just so happened that I was reading this segment yesterday about World War II, and that really I thought this is just appropriate. I come to this part of the book on the day before D-Day. That's got to tell you something. All right, we're out of time for this segment. We got one more coming up. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about next. I got some other stories we can get into. Or your phone calls, 319-527-3864. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Whew, man, that's heavy. That every time I think about that, I think about that. I've had people. What? I've had people tell me that tax money was never mine to begin with. That's a bunch of poussoir. Oh, that's the poussoir. All right. I'm ugly enough to call, but not to correspondingly articulate. Is that what you're saying? Ron said he didn't mean to rile me up. Well, I mean, it is what it is. Pat Ray says that on my commentary of the the jackbooted thugs with guns coming to you and putting you in a cage for refusing to pay your taxes is not overstating it. Every law at the end of the sequence ends in armed enforcement. Yeah, I'm just taking you I'm skipping past all the other bits, right to the boring bits, right to the end, where they come and they arrest you. That's what it comes down to. But the children. Watch Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers is amazing. Band of Brothers is also amazing. The Big Red One, another great one. There's a lot of good war movies that but for Saving Private Ryan was so visceral and so in your face and so, it was a dramatic change in how storytelling of wartime went, and it was shocking. Again, I guarantee you that probably a full third of the theater was weeping when I looked around. I still remember it, including me. I had tears in my eyes. My wife was just openly weeping at the time. She's like, she goes, I never want to see that again. Never want to see that again. Melody said her grandpa fought that fight and lived to come home. Man, my respect. My respect. Terry says we are living that evil today. I would agree with that. We're facing some of those same type of evils today. And unfortunately, it seems like some of that stuff is stirring up inside of our own government even. My dad enlisted at 16, said Brian, quote unquote, legally 15, but there was a bit of sleight of hand. Yeah. It wasn't a computerized society. I smudged the date on my birth certificate and showed it to the guy, kind of thing. Saving Private Ryan, says Harold, was how it was. GIs said that they said it was, the GIs were commenting that that's how it was. Yeah. No, it definitely, it's crazy. Joel said his kinfolk fought World War II in the Alaska Militia, the State Territorial Guard, the State Defense Force, the ATG and the State Defense Force. Yeah. That's some good stuff there. Some good stuff. All right, I got a line on hold. Looks like it's Barbara. We'll talk to Barbara here in a hot second. Yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. The genesis. Oh, I'm sorry. It says the genies, and I was like, the genies. The genesis of income tax. What you paid on the profit from income, not wages. Well, that's exactly it. Income tax is they bastardized the definition of income instead of wages. There's a difference between wages and income, and that initial income tax was the tax was on the profit that you made, not on the wages. But it's become, and again, this is all about feeding the beast. That's what the whole thing is about. Feeding the beasts. Oh, all right. Did I miss anything? Did I miss any comments? Melissa says the closing comments where we ask for people to stop the damn hate. I guess I'm going to have to listen to that. I don't know what was going on. Alphabet people. Okay. Everybody gets their feels hurt. That's what it's all. Everybody's getting their feelings hurt, apparently. Not that really matters. It's not my job to make sure your feelings aren't hurt. I'll tell you that for nothing. I'm still going back here. I had to teach myself my own. This is back to the schooling thing. Frank said I had to teach myself for my occupation. There was no school teaching back 35 years ago. There was no school teaching it. His occupation 35 years ago. I mean, again, that's what happened to the apprenticeships and the guilds and the programs and things like that. Why did you have to spend a gazillion? Because it became an industry. That's why it became an industry. That's part of the problem. All right, let's continue on. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We got one line on hold. We'll continue with that right now. Okay, we're continuing now. One final segment for the show for today. Again, on this 80th anniversary of D-Day. I don't think we can overstate that enough right now. But we got a line on hold, and so we'll go over there and we'll see what you have to say. Barbara is on the line from Fairbanks. Let's talk with her. Good morning, Barbara. What's on your mind?
Good morning. Hey, I just let folks know that we're going to start revving up the campaign to renew the tax cap, which is in October. A lot of us are kind of concerned that we have everybody so accustomed now to saying no that this is when we need to vote yes. So every 2 years we have the petition to renew the tax cap, and then in the next year, after we get the petition signed, we get it on the ballot, we have to go vote for it. And so this is that year where we show up on October 1st and vote to renew the tax cap.
Right.
And there'll be mayor candidates and assembly candidates there too. So, but the big thing is to renew that tax cap.
Right.
Because that is the one thing that has protected us.
Yeah, no, I carried a tax cap petition for probably, 15 years or something. Didn't hit it every year, but I hit it quite a few years in there carrying that cap. And of course, I know that you guys will probably be at the fair and other places, but there's probably somebody around you near you in Fairbanks who's carrying a tax cap petition. I know it's a huge group effort.
Well, we had the petitions last year. This year is the time to go show up and vote for it. So it's every other year. Last year we did the petition.
Okay.
This year we vote for it. So on October 1st, you got to make sure you get to the polls and vote, hit that yes button to renew the tax cap so that they can't sneak in any more of these property tax increases
Yeah,
like they tried to back in May.
absolutely. No, and
So,
again, that the whole mechanism behind the tax cap in Fairbanks is that a citizens initiative, which is the tax cap is, can't be changed for 2 years. After there's a 2-year moratorium on any change by the assembly. And so that's why they renew it every 2 years, because it keeps that moratorium in place and keeps the assembly from fiddling with it. And what we saw this last time around was a special election. That's the only way to change a ballot initiative is with another ballot initiative. And that's why we saw this sneaky maneuver to them try to change it. But again, I think they got their hand slapped hard enough. We'll see what happens. But people still have got to go out and vote to maintain that 2-year moratorium on it.
right. So you start seeing these vote yes on October 1 signs. And this is not them coming back for a tax increase. This is to vote to keep the tax cap in place. So, and like I said, it's a really important mechanism for us here. And I hope everybody shows up. And if your community does not have a tax cap, you might want to take a look at what we do in Fairbanks.
I would agree. I think any community that doesn't have it's essentially what it is. It's a spending cap. We call it the tax cap, but it's essentially a spending cap. It restricts the government's ability to spend money over a certain percentage of increase in the CPI, and of course outside things like bond initiatives and everything else, which is why bond initiatives are so pernicious, because they fall outside the cap. And so we've got to be careful on
Right.
it. That's a separate issue, but it's also a thing. But yes, it's actually a spending cap is what it is. I wish we could get something like that statewide on the state level, but every community that doesn't have one should definitely have one. I know Donna Gilbert, the last time I spoke to her has probably been 8-9 years now. She had done the math and figured that the tax cap in Fairbanks had saved taxpayers almost $250 million over the 30 years the tax cap had been in place. So, I mean, that's a lot of money, and we definitely would like to see that in other communities as well.
Right, absolutely. Well, and what it does too is it ensures that if government wants to grow, and government always wants to grow, that there has to be growth in the private sector to support that, because the only way you get more tax revenue is if your economy grows.
Right.
So
that's a direct connection, right? That is the direct connection between the public and the private economy, because they can only grow by how much because it's new construction, CPI, and things like debt responsibilities. Those are the three things that cause the tax to grow, the cap to grow rather. And so you have to have that new construction. You've got to have that new revenue if you want it to grow. So they have to encourage that.
Right. And what it does too is it gives the Planning and Planning Board sort of an incentive to consider pro-growth policies rather than anti-growth policies. Because if you're always coming down on the side of anti-growth, you're never going to get the new revenue that you need to do the things you want to expand, right? Okay. So it kind of becomes a partnership rather than a conflict.
Come on, Barb.
So revenue cap is very important.
I mean, come on, Barb. A Planning and Planning Board would never be anti-development. Are you kidding me? That's what they're supposed to be there for. They would never be anti-development, right?
Well, there are some people who would like to stop development, and I get preserving neighborhood integrity and all that kind of thing, and I'm good with that. But, we don't want a huge number of superhighways all running around. But at the same time, we do need roads and we do need things. And, one of the things the tax revenue cap does is it gives the Planning and Planning Board somewhat of an incentive to consider economic growth in revenue, what that means for revenue.
Right.
And, you're constantly creating obstacles for developers, and then you sit and whine that you'd have no revenue. Well, you should look at the connection there. That's kind of my philosophy on it. So the tax revenue cap has served us really quite well here in Fairbanks. It saved us $10 million this year alone. I look for Donna Gilbert's old study to see how much it had saved at that time, but I have been unable to find it. But it would be really interesting to see that. Anyway, when people start seeing these yes signs, they're not to raise the tax revenue cap. They are to keep the one we have.
Right. So vote yes October 1st on the tax cap. Yep, there you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Barbara's comment actually is a perfect segue into my final story for today, because she's talking about development and this NIMBY, not in my backyard, and this people who want to freeze growth. And this is the final story for today. Backers of the cruise initiative to block large cruise ships from docking in Juneau on Saturdays and the 4th of July now have enough signatures to put it on the ballot. And the voters will need to decide whether or not to vote for it on October the 1st. This is the ship-free social media campaign. These are the group of people that say, oh, these cruise ships, they are horrible. The initiative declares that excess human presence sullies the sentient, sacred, divine, and living ancestral natural environment necessary for cultural and spiritual health and growth. This is what the initiative actually says. It says the city failed to balance the economic benefits of some against the economic and other harms of the many. I mean, harm is a pretty strong word, according to Wynn Gruning over here at Must Read. Harm is a pretty strong word. This ship-free petition seeks to undermine years of successful good faith collaboration. I mean, apparently they haven't figured out which side of their bread is buttered here. Those ships cause harm. The excess human presence sullies the divine natural environment. These are the same people that complain about the flag popping in the wind detracts from their beautiful views of Denali, the millions of acres of Denali, this one flag, this 3.5-foot flag. Same kind of people. They're not, I mean, they don't even take into account all the facts, because facts don't matter. This is the feelings. The DEC, Alaska DEC Science Panel, concluded that cruise ship, their water treatment systems, for example, are the most advanced, effective, and proven treatment systems available on the planet and are significantly more effective than most municipal water systems. The cruise ship smoke emissions are abated by state-of-the-art technology. Juneau, in concert with the industry, was the first port in the world to offer environmentally friendly hydroelectric shore power for ships. They're as green as they can be. They're bringing in millions of dollars a year annually to help with Juneau and a bunch of other products, but we just can't do it. If this thing passes, the estimates, they vary, but the loss of direct spending could approach $40 million a year if they include this whole, we're going to stop the ships from docking on Saturday. Not in my backyard, man. I don't like that. No. I mean, wow. Are people even, I mean, if all I did was read, if I'd never heard about it, but I read that first line about the excess human presence sullies the sentient, sacred, divine, etc., I'd vote no right there. All right, folks, we got to go. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. Be kind, love one another, live well. I mean, come on. The excess human presence. Wait. We got to get this. The excess human presence sullies the sentient, sacred, divine, and living ancestral natural environment necessary for cultural and spiritual health and growth. The excess human presence. I got here first. I like this place. We don't want to let anybody else in here. That's essentially what they're saying. I like this place just the way it is. Again, the same person who looked at a wide 180-degree panorama out in front of them of millions of acres of wilderness and heard one little flag flap in the distance and said, I'm disturbed by that. That's ruining my experience of the park. It's ruining my experience in the park with a thing. Oh my God. I mean, seriously. And yeah, just seriously. Okay. I'm sorry that the flag popping got in your way. I mean, don't let the machine guns and the howitzers bother you when you're D-Day landing. But, that flag popping, that was that excess human presence. I think I identify as that as well, Joel. Joel said he identifies as that. Maybe I do as well. I'm a big guy. Maybe I identify as excess human presence just on that alone. That's just me. I identify as excess human presence. So much stupid, it hurts. So much stupid, it hurts. All right. What are we going to do tomorrow? Firearms Friday. I don't have any guests. I just don't know. Maybe we'll get somebody. Maybe not. I know it'll be you and me and Willie. So hopefully you'll come on in and join us tomorrow. So let me say it one more time. Happy D-Day celebration. And let me say it again. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.